And then there's like the integrated business, which I think is actually harder. I don't know if it's harder because I'm doing it or if it's harder because it's just harder.
I think it's harder, actually. I think it's in my personal opinion, and maybe you can dissuade me of this, is that doing something that you care a lot about and then trying to run it as a business, it's basically impossible for those things, for those incentives to not diverge at some point.
That's my daily struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe then your business is not the top priority of personal development. Mine is, because I'm so intertwined in it and I love it so much.
Totally.
Can't be contained.
That's what I'm talking about.
Cheers, dude.
Cheers.
Welcome to the Can't Be Contained podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me to a room that's not yours.
This is my favorite impromptu podcast we've ever done.
We were drinking mimosas and just...
This is the same mimosa I was drinking when I was not planning on doing a podcast.
Exactly. We were standing and we just started to have a conversation that we'll see if it's actually interesting. And then someone came up to us and said, hey, do you want to record a podcast? And you were like, oh yeah, I have a podcast. And I was like, oh, I like other people's podcasts because then I don't have to do any of the work. This is great for me.
It was like a match made in heaven in that moment.
In fact.
And the subject material was so interesting because my question to you is, what's the personality of number 4?
Oh gosh, yes. Okay, so we should give the tiniest bit of context. So we started talking about synesthesia, which is something that I experience and was like unaware of until I was at some time in high school. And the particular form of synesthesia that I experience is colors for all letters and numbers. And then the numbers 0 through 11 have distinct personalities. And there's like some texture and things. We'll skip that part.
Yeah.
And so you said, what's personality number 4? And then I refused to answer the question for a moment to give the context that as I have like dived into this, right, I realized that all of the different personalities are like facets of my own personality that have sort of been like fractured out into these other like people. So it ends up being like a mildly like personal thing, but I don't mind answering the question. And as I was explaining it to somebody one time, I was like, oh yeah, like I realized all the numbers are me. And they were like, well, who else could it be? And I was like, oh. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So number 4, and I'm going to try really hard because sometimes when I start talking about this stuff, I'll like start slotting in, I'll say colors instead of numbers and things, and I don't realize I'm doing it, but
I'll track it.
Okay. So 4 yellow is yellow. And it's not like, okay, I'll make another like quick caveat. It's not that 4 is like the color yellow. 4 is yellow. Like,
I see.
Like they're the same thing.
Yeah,
so that's why it's confusing.
Yeah.
So all of like the personal warmth that you might feel with somebody, like when you meet somebody that's like very like kind of open and pleasant to be around, and they're like generally curious. These are the people that ask you like lots of questions and things like that. That's number 4.
Interesting.
And it's like a particularly nice shade of yellow. And to get sort of into like the texture and maybe like transparency because it has a material quality. You only have like a flower that has like a petal on it, and it's that sort of like nice, like kind of delicate but like velvety touch, but you can like see sun through it like a tiny bit. It's like that basically.
You are one of the most interesting people that I've met in a long time, and I've had probably 7 conversations with you in the last 24 hours, and I'm like, who is this person? Tell me more about like how you perceive the world. My assumption about you is that you and I perceive the world in very different ways, just based on the conversations that we had. And I get so fascinated because I think I think potentially many people think that everyone else views the world in the same way, when in reality, there's 8 billion different perceptions of the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if you can kind of like distill down and communicate, how do you view the world through the lens of Matthew, and how do you perceive information, and how do you make sense of information?
That's a fun question. Well, this is like a topic that I like a lot because like all language and all of our experiences are necessarily figurative, right?
Yeah.
They are not literally the thing themselves.
Yeah.
Therefore, there must be a representation of it, which leads like kind of what makes the world interesting, probably. So I like math, which we sort of talked about.
Yeah, and I hate math.
Which is funny, because math is necessarily figurative. It's literally just a way to describe the relationship between things. So I didn't realize how opinionated I was about how we like teach or like think about mathematics until I have 2 daughters, and my eldest was going into kindergarten like right when COVID started.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we're going to do like remote kindergarten. And I was like, that's literally the worst of both worlds. Like I cannot imagine a dumber thing to do, right? Yeah. So I started teaching her mathematics. My wife taught her how to read. And as I started diving down that, I was like, oh my gosh, I actually have a lot of opinions about mathematics and things, right? Because that sort of like sense and like relationship of things, I think when I was younger, I had like a lot of, felt like a lot of like anxiety and like needed to have something that was like concrete. Someone asked me like, I was like, what was your favorite subject in school? Because I think people ask. And I said, oh, it's mathematics. And they're like, really? And I was like, yeah, it's the only thing that always has a right answer.
Oh, interesting.
Right? And so like there was a lot of like emotional security for me, like in mathematics.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because I could just always be correct, right? And the other thing too is that like I would strive to get a perfect score because there's no like subjectivity. You don't have to guess, right? And so like I think that's a bit like probably revealing about like how I feel about things is that like I'd love to just get like a perfect score in mathematics because then there's nothing deficient.
So, Kay, tell me how you are. How do you show up in relationships?
That's a great question.
Because I feel, and the reason why I'm asking this question is it's like the nuances between EQ and IQ. Yeah. Right? I'm, for someone who's more developed in their IQ, their EQ, sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's more of a harder muscle. So I'm curious how that shows up in your relationships.
I'd say at my best, right? I always say like the thing that you're very good at, right? Like the thing that's sort of like your superpower is also like almost always directly related to the thing that you're like weakest around.
100%.
Yeah. So I care a lot about what other people think of me, probably more than I would like to do that, right? So in the worst manifestations, right, then I think everyone thinks something poorly of me, right? And I'm trying to do the perfection thing to try to
I got you. Yeah.
But in the best manifestation, I can like perceive other people's like thoughts and feelings and emotions, and it can lead to like quite a bit of like empathy when like directed more toward I'm trying to think about how someone else is feeling, not how they're feeling about me, if that makes sense. And so I have a tendency, especially like relationships, like my wife and things, right? We've been married for like 13 years. We know each other very well. Yeah, it's a long time.
Holy.
I try to solve problems too much, right? Because for me, I find security in being able to just solve things. So then they go away. But in our relationship, I've had to like grow a lot to be like, oh, actually, like we're not here to just solve the problem. We actually just want to talk about it and express like our feelings and things like that. So in my professional life, I do client services very well because I can like perceive how they're feeling, and that's like important to me, and that's like a good portion of it. But I would say that like that needing of like security of having like a right answer and wanting to solve problems all the time. I'm a problem solver by nature, and that's like a thing that's a weakness.
So given we live in a world where there is not much certainty and the right answer, other than in math, there's not many other things where it's like, this is the truth. This is the sole truth.
No, I know.
So how does that have an impact on you emotionally, energetically? Because it's not just math. You know, how I guess my question is like, how do you deal with the uncertainty of life?
Poorly.
I just do more math.
No, that's it. No, this is the thing, right? So like we're both, I guess, we have to say like entrepreneurs, right? And someone was like, oh my gosh, like you're like a really motivated person, right? Like what's the secret, you know? I remember I went to university at Purdue, and they have like an entrepreneurs like society there, and they asked me to come speak at it or something. Yeah. So I went there, and there's this whole like group of kids or whatever, and they were like, so what like motivates you? Like, why did you decide to become an entrepreneur? And I was like, I really don't like people telling me what to do. And they were like, elaborate. And I was like, when other people tell you to do stuff, I don't like that.
It's pretty simple,
I was like, it's really that simple. Yeah, you monetize your neuroses.
That's so true though.
Yeah. So that was it, right?
Yeah.
Is like, for like the longest time, like, people are like, oh, you have like this massive like capacity for like getting things done and like this motivation. And the joke I was making was like, you would too if somebody had a gun to your head.
Right,
and they're like,
right,
what?
yeah,
And I'm like, no, that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
I always refer to it as the bear. Like the bear's just always chasing you. And you can sit down and you can rest for like a while, but it's just always coming. And I've been running from the bear for like a really long time. And it's led to a lot of like success as people define it in entrepreneurship, but like it's a struggle to work through, isn't it?
Yeah, I think at the core, all entrepreneurs are psychopaths.
Yeah.
Like if I'm being totally honest, I think there's a certain amount.
If you want to hit like anyone who is incredibly excellent at something, it has to come at some cost because there's some imbalance that drives you to that level of obsession, right?
For me, early on in my entrepreneurial career, which was like 14, 15 years ago, it definitely came from trauma.
Sure.
You know, it's like the wound of like, I want to be someone. I want to prove myself. I want to, you know, I want to live up to the expectations of my parents. And they didn't have clear, my parents were not, they weren't like, you need to be this or you need to make this. They never did, but there was like this perceived projection that I had on them of I need to live up to their expectations of what they think is going to be successful. And so that was ultimately, which like, that's fucking jet fuel. Like that, like operating from trauma and operating from that wound of like proving and striving and pushing and grinding. And then I got to this point where I was like, I'm going to burn everything that I have down.
Yeah.
You know, I had 2 businesses at a time. One of them was called Liftify. We helped personal trainers go from like in the gym to online. And then Hungry for Happiness, where we help women who struggle with disordered eating and body image issues. And I was like, none of this is fun for me anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, I gotta take a pivot. And so now it's not gone, but it's like I am so aware of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm so aware of the energy of like, okay, I'm operating from trauma versus I'm operating from my soul. I call it like soul or like my center or my alignment.
Yeah. Do you feel like, so this is always like a question I think is interesting. It's like, if you heal from like whatever that thing is, do you feel like you lose your edge or do you feel like it's something that you can carry on?
So funny, dude. I've had this conversation so many times. I'm actually so much more powerful when I'm not in that, but every part of my ego and mind tells me that that's not true.
Totally.
Right. And so my mind and my ego is like, no, we gotta stay on our edge and we gotta keep grinding, we gotta keep pushing and we have to keep being, there's almost like this hypervigilance. Yes. Like you call it chasing the bear. Yeah. But yeah, I always say like waiting for the other shoe to drop of like, I gotta keep pushing and going. And I know when I'm in that energy, I burn myself out. I burn my team out.
Totally.
They're like, and then that energy percolates into our clients and it's just like this gigantic clusterfuck. Yeah. Versus when I'm actually aligned and I'm operating from clarity and power and soul and heart and just like my truth essentially, like the truth of who I am versus like the fragmented, distorted pieces of conditioning based on trauma. When I'm there, everything just goes. But we live in a world, and even what's reflected back to us as entrepreneurs is like, you got to work really hard. You got to push.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's so confusing.
Opportunity cost is a lifestyle.
Yes. Yeah. That's it. How do you navigate that?
I've tried to, having kids is like interesting, right? Because you're sort of like raising like a little version of yourself in some regard, and to see personality traits that you have then like reflected back to you from like your kids, I think is like a really helpful thing. Helpful, not stressful. As like my daughter, she's doing math and she's like writing on her notebook or whatever. And I'm like asking her a question and I'm like, no, you've got to like write it down. And she's like, and she just will sit there and then she'll spit out the answer. And I'm like, kid, I was like, you got to like show the steps and like work through it or whatever. And then in the back of my head, I'm like remembering being in 4th grade and turning in an assignment. And my teacher was like, hey, you have to show the steps. And I was like, no, there was no steps. I just did the thing. And he's like, but I can't give you partial credit if you get any of them wrong. And I was like, I didn't get any of them wrong. And to see my kid do that shit back to me.
You're like,
now as I'm like,
okay.
How much do I nurture this? How much do I try to correct it now? But this is the thing. I've been trying to prioritize things that feel like good and are things that like I legitimately care about outside of just trying to outrun the bear. And I've tried to find boundaries for that keep me from having like the tendencies, right? Like all the entrepreneurial type people I know, like they'll be like, oh, I'm like really passionate about like whatever this thing is, and then they just turn it into a business. Right. So I'm like trying to put like safeguards on that. Like there's some projects that I'm doing and some people I'm like working with for things that are like important to them, and I'm like specifically staying out of the business. Because otherwise I'll just go nuts with it, just like I do anything else. Yeah. And I think it's important to spend your time in things that just like have no direct productivity, but like maybe have productivity in here.
Yeah, dude, like play.
Yeah.
You know, I have a sticker on my laptop and it says play is productive.
Yeah.
And it reminds me like when I am surfing, when I am dancing, when I am just fucking around, it's so productive for the soul.
Yeah.
You know, it's so productive for the heart. It's so productive for the inner energy. And it's truly about, it's self-awareness at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, do I have enough balance of being in this like unproductive plaything that's not monetized?
Totally.
Right? But I understand the struggle of like, ooh, I have this passion. I love it. Like, I'm going to start a business. Like, why?
That's such a weird thing to have to be the punchline. Yeah.
I do love, like, I'm grateful with pause. Like, I love it. Like, I genuinely... Like when people ask me, like, do you love what you do? And I'm like, I genuinely love what I do. Like, is it hard as fuck? 100%.
Of course.
Like, it's so hard. And it's interesting because it meets all of my... Have you ever studied any of like Tony Robbins stuff?
I have not.
Okay, so he talks about like the 6 human needs, right? Which, let's see if I can get them.
Right.
Certainty, uncertainty, significance, growth, contribution, and love.
Now try to name the 7 dwarfs.
I don't even know if I can. I told you I don't watch movies.
Yeah, I don't know. That's not true. You watch Home Alone?
That's true. It's my favorite movie of all time.
All the time.
I was like, I'm so excited to watch Home Alone tomorrow. It's exact. I'm going to fly home and watch Home Alone.
I've totally derailed us going about the 6 needs.
So the 6 human needs. My business meets those 6 human needs in abundance every single day. Right? There is an abundance of certainty.
Sure.
You know, there is an abundance of uncertainty. Right? I'm like, okay, well, where's, you know, is this marketing campaign going to work? Or what about this? Or this product deal? Or blah, 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 blah. There's so much uncertainty, but it's exciting.
Yeah.
Right? There's significance in it. Right? And to a certain degree, it's like my needs for significance are met. Love, you know, there's so much love there. Like I receive so much love from my clients and I give them so much love and my team and, you know, contribution. We're constantly contributing not only to our students, but also to like various charities and things that we care about. Anyway, it's just like, it meets my human needs like 10 out of 10. But it also pokes on every single one of my insecurities every single day, you know?
Yeah.
And so
No,
it's
totally.
like, I talk about this concept a lot with my mastermind members of, before anything, I'm curious your perception on this because you and I are 2 very different entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
very different. Like we both have had a lot of success, but we're very different the way that we approach business from what I know about you. But I treat my business as a personal development strategy above everything else. It's like if I can use those triggers and turn them into expansion and growth and like really grow from it, like that's the biggest thing. Because I don't really believe that businesses fail. I feel like people fail their businesses.
Sure.
I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, so it's funny because people ask me all the time, like, oh my gosh, do you like love what you do?
I think I asked you that this morning in the sauna.
Yeah, that's literally it.
Because it's like, you're so good at what you do. So I'm like, I know.
That's true. I'm very good at it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that like, it's like neutral. Like, I don't know. Like I enjoy solving puzzles.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. It's just puzzles with lots of money. So for context, I guess. So I have like a conversion rate optimization business in e-commerce. We work exclusively on Shopify with these clients that kind of gross 10 million and up or whatever. So it's like a very good sandbox for like deep statistical analysis, right? And I find it interesting and I'm incredibly good at it. But like the actual end game arc for all of that, right, is like there are other things that I actually care quite a bit about. Like we were joking around like bookstores, coffee and things like that. Like local food is something that's incredibly important to me. And I've some other projects that I've like worked on directly benefit like some of those things. And I sort of have like a long game on that. And I had originally tried to do a few of those projects and needed investment. And after talking to some folks was like convinced not to take investment. Again, and which is advice that I try to give other people as much as I can, which is like, if there's a way not to take investment, just don't do it.
Okay.
And so all of the stuff that I'm doing now, the team that I've like built, it's all actually to serve those other more like philanthropic endeavors. And this is just a great way to make the money to support all of those things, actually.
It's really interesting. I think there's two types of entrepreneurs. Where like you have a business, for lack of a better word, I'll just call it a boring business, right? It's boring, it's predictable. You know what you're doing. You're so good at it. You're the best in the world at that niche, which is like super niche. You are, and it's like, then we can take that to fuel our lifestyle and fuel things that we love doing. Like you love giving back and you're obsessed with coffee and bookstores and local food and all of that kind of stuff. So you can use the abundance from that to fuel these other things. And then there's like the integrated business, which I think is actually harder. I don't know if it's harder because I'm doing it or if it's harder because it's just harder.
I think it's harder, actually. I think it's in my personal opinion, and maybe you can dissuade me of this, is that doing something that you care a lot about and then trying to run it as a business, it's basically impossible for those things, for those incentives to not diverge at some point.
That's my daily struggle.
Yeah.
So maybe then your business is not the top priority of personal development. Mine is, because I'm so intertwined in it and I love it so much.
Totally. The things are mutually exclusive for me.
Yeah. See, this is interesting.
I know.
This is really interesting.
Well, and the thing is that like I've seen too many people spoil the thing that they love that they're good at, right? So like patronage used to be a thing. Because I know like artists, musicians, and things like that who are incredibly talented, incredibly passionate, that just like fizzle out because they have to commoditize the thing that they actually like care about. And I think that can be hard, if not impossible.
So this is an interesting relationship that I have with my business, because I've always been in personal development, right? It's personally, and I've had a couple personal development businesses, and it's the reason why these businesses pop and they grow is because I'm so damn passionate about the thing. Like what I did yesterday, get on stage, do the thing, teach people how to breathe. Like I'll do that all day long. But then businesses grow because of the passion. And then there's like this line of like, okay, I didn't start this to be a CEO. I did not start this to run a company, right? And so my constant thing is like constantly like peeling myself out of the business to be like, no, we've got to like, the way I see it is like business and brand. And my COO is like so good at the business side of it. Like he's amazing at the business. And so my work is like letting him just do it so that I can stay in my zone of genius and keep doing and being in integrity to why I started in the first place. Yeah,
I think it's important to know that about yourself, and you can make that space for you and what you do. I mean, like the other thing too, right, is like I am fortunate enough to know some like incredibly brilliant folks that I can trust in my life. And as a result of that, I'm now able to slide more into like, just really lean into like the client relationship portion, which those relationships are really important to me. And then also come do things like this and hang out and meet other people and like create new opportunity and
drink mimosa, and do some podcasting,
that old chestnut. And like I'm not a fool, right? Like I enjoy this like a lot actually, and so maybe I'm not as open to the fact that maybe actually there is a portion of it that I do enjoy, and there is a portion of it around the business that is something that like gives something to me. I don't know.
So tell me about going back to talking about trauma.
Why not?
I can't get over the fact that I feel like you're British, but you're not.
I know.
Do you get that all the time?
Yeah. Mostly because I have an odd accent.
It's so cool though. It's like, it's not British, but it's not just American. And then the things that you say are British.
All of my close friends and like all of my time at like university and things were like all with people from like different places and cultures.
So you're just like a mixing pot of everything.
I just like freely like absorb it and pile it on and like just don't resist it at this point.
I love that. When I lived in London, I came home and my parents were like, "You sound completely different."
Great. Kids are really good at that as well. It's really fun when we go to the UK. Our kids will like, they went to like this little camp or whatever, and like they're like for like a day, right? My 8-year-old comes up to me and she's like, "Dad, do you know what my jumper is?" And I was like, "Your what?" And she's like, "My jumper." And I was like, Yeah, kid, it's right here. Right?
They're like so spongy.
It's so spongy or whatever. And like, I don't know, there's no rules actually, right?
Yeah.
So you should just, I don't know, absorb whatever feels right.
It's so great.
Yeah.
I was like, I could have sworn, I would have bet money that you were like born in England and then moved here.
I think that's a compliment.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Right.
So this whole idea, this whole trauma, let's talk about your childhood wounds.
Sure. Which ones?
Tell me about the one that drives you in business. Where did that come from?
That's a good question. Here's the thing about school, right? Is I went to public school like most people. And it's like an interesting environment, right? Because when you're an adult and someone's an asshole, you just don't talk to them anymore.
Yeah.
But when you're a kid and you're in school, you're like stuck with these motherfuckers for like 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are. Right? And so, me wanting to like be enough or be accepted and all of that stuff or whatever, like definitely probably like contributed to a lot of these things, and like wanting like acceptance from like my parents and wanting to probably having like a lot of insecurity around like being criticized and things like this or whatever. And so like my natural inclination to backlash against that is, well, if I'm the best, then nobody can criticize me because I'm literally the best, right? And so I just try to be the best at like whatever the thing is that I did. And then it's like the worst thing, right? Like the worst thing that happened to a hypochondriac is they actually get sick. The worst thing that can happen to somebody who wants to be the best is that they actually become the best, right? And so like I just fed that back into myself like over and over and over again. And I had like lovely like grandparent figures like in my life, and they were like very encouraging and were like, you can do whatever you want to, and I believe them.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And so I've like always just like had that in like the back of my head. And I remember getting to university, and I had like some very lofty goal I wanted to. I was training parkour at the time. And
what? That's dope.
We can talk about that in a minute. There's a whole psychological aspect of that. And I was like, there's like these athletes or whatever that I like really admired. And I was like, and I'm the type of person where like, when you see somebody like, oh my gosh, I really like, I don't know, pick somebody famous or whatever. And like, they want to like meet them. That seems like kind of dumb. Like I want to like know them, if that makes sense. Right. And so
that's a really good distinction.
I felt like a lot of like kinship with some of these people. Like we had a very similar like mindset. And so I was like, oh, like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but like, I remember sitting in my dorm room and being like, I have so much time. Like there's just nothing to do. Like I'm just at college now, right? Like I have no responsibilities. I just show up to fucking class. So I remember I was like, I think I know somebody that has like a camera. So we just started training parkour like a ton, making videos, and then just got like woven in. And that's actually how I got into e-commerce. Is there was a parkour clothing brand that I admired, and I like kind of shoehorned in working for them.
No way.
And then I dropped out of mechanical engineering graduate school to be the operator for that company.
Stop it. How old were you then?
Shit. Not that old. 20?
Wow.
And
you were COO when you were 20 years old?
I guess, yeah. I mean, it was a shit nothing company. I was also the janitor.
Yeah.
But like, there's people like, I'm the CEO. I'm like, if you're also the janitor, I wouldn't go around telling people that.
The best is like CEO of, and then just your name.
Yeah,
that's what people
literally
like LinkedIn.
That.
I'm like, what?
Yeah. That's why I hate entrepreneurship as a culture. People are like, I want to run my own business and have an empire.
That's wild. And that's how you got into e-commerce?
Yeah. That's it.
And then it just went on from there.
Yeah, as it turns out, when you're doing finite element analysis, doing e-commerce and analytics is kind of easy.
Do you find it easy?
Yeah.
Other people are like, whoa, you're smart, but you're like,
it's super easy.
A walk in the park.
Yeah. But I mean, there's lots of things that people find easy that I find difficult.
Like what?
I don't know.
You just said that to be nice. You just said that so people don't feel dumb.
I don't know.
You're like, absolutely nothing, actually.
No. Right. I admire people who write fiction. I think that is like the most interesting and difficult thing. And it's so opposite of my like highly analytical personality. Like I rate somebody who writes fiction like at like the highest level of genius. And I admire it so much. And I really want to try to participate in it. And I know I'm just going to be absolutely dreadful at it.
Participate by read it or participate by write it?
Try writing it. Yeah.
I'll read your first book.
Okay.
I might be the only one.
That'll be bad.
What would you write about?
Who could know? I really like, actually, you know what? I like fantasy. So, but I like it because when you write, like you can just make up whatever you want. Like that's like one of the cool bits of it, right? So like, why not make up something that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
But I really like within like the fantasy subgenre, what's called like hard magic. And the differentiation there is like you basically make like another physics system for like how the magic works, which is way more impressive because then when somebody does something, you understand like what goes into it. Whereas like what's called soft magic is magic of like convenience, where somebody goes like, oh, I can just do a spell. And you're like, oh, well, I guess if you can just conveniently close plot holes with magic. So it's like kind of boring for me in particular.
But you and I were having a conversation the other night where we were talking about how some of the best fiction books are actually not fiction. It's real shit that happens in our world.
No, fiction oftentimes is more true than nonfiction.
That's what we were talking about the other night. And I'm like, you're so right. Like Harry Potter, for instance, is a classic example.
Okay.
But like, I truly believe humanity has the possibility of doing energy work to the degree where we can heal each other and we can...
Absolutely.
It's wild, but we live in this like 3D world where it's like that's not nurtured and that's not supported. And so we become just so structured and 3D in everything that we do. And we forget that we have this like infinite potential of using energy as a healing tool or whatever we use it for.
Yeah, for whatever reason, we decide that like making a book that's just some dipshit rubric for like rules to follow to be a different person. And surprise, surprise, it never fucking works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But you read fiction, you like actually enter into the complex like emotions and feelings of like another person's experience that like exists inside your head and no shit changes you as a person.
So then that confirms the ideology that thoughts becomes things. If we are so in a book and we're reading it and we're feeling it, like we're like vision work, for instance. Like do you do any like vision work and stuff?
So I done like mental training type things. And I got into that actually when I was on the swim team when I was in high school, is our coach we would do mental training and we'd all like lay down on the pool deck or whatever and you turn off all the lights or whatever and we'd listen to like these tapes. And everybody thought they were, tapes, because I'm old. Cassette tapes. And everybody on the swim team thought we were like, oh yeah, coach doesn't know it, but we all go to sleep or whatever. Yeah. And then we were actually just like going through and doing like meditation and we were all just like tranced basically doing these things, but we all thought we were sleeping and we thought we were getting away with something.
Oh, hilarious.
Yeah, it was great.
That's so good.
But then I was like, they gave us like the tapes to take home and like do it at home or whatever. And somebody was like, hey, have you ever just like played one of these fucking tapes when you're not laying down or whatever? And like listen to it. We all listened to it. We're like, oh my God. You're not going to be nervous. You're going. Yeah, it's just great. It's just so good. But yeah, you just like enter into that like deep like vision things. When you get to like the day of like the performance or whatever, you feel like so much more calm because you've actually been there and had all the emotions and everything already. I
find it interesting. When I first started out in personal development, I was just doing like a lot of like mindset stuff, and then you know so many people were teaching the concept, like, you know, Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and all like the old boys in personal development of like the body experience of like believing that you were there. And, you know, Tony Robbins conference, like being in the experience of like, you're there, it's already happening, act as if, like that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of just like dismiss it. I'm like, yeah. That's just like some sort of like motivation, like, you know, they're just trying to like amp me up. And then when I started to like get into business, I was like, I'm going to like take this concept and just like see what happens.
Sure.
Right? So like before any launch that we would do in our business, for 30 days before the launch, I would visualize the exact number of people that I wanted to come into that class or that cohort or whatever, and the revenue from that. And I would just like sit there in meditation, like feel it and believe it, like act as if it's already done. And I shit you not, every single time I came within like $10 of what it was going to be. And it's one of these things where like everyone talks about it, but I think it's like something like gratitude. Everyone talks about gratitude, so like no one really does it because they're like, yeah. Right? It's one of those things like vision work and like embodied vision work is one of those things where it's literally science. Who was talking about that yesterday? One of the speakers on stage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so here's the thing, right? Is historically, you know, you're probably unsurprised to know that I approach things from like an analytical standpoint.
No, tell me more about that.
And so like previously, a lot of things that we consider like woo or whatever, right? I'm just like, come on. Like, this is not a real thing, right? Which is like pretty reductionist. And especially in the last like couple of years, I've tried to be more open to the fact, as I've been studying a lot about like, neuroplasticity, something that's like, endlessly fascinating.
That's how we got on the color for the personality
That's
conversation.
exactly it.
Okay,
right?
ketamine.
Yeah, exactly. And through neuroplasticity, right? You basically, it's interesting because the mind shapes itself, and the actual mechanism, like chemically, of how that happens, is relatively unhelpful if you actually just want to do it, right? It doesn't inform the how. And there's a lot of things that people like practice or do or whatever, right? That like edge into like magical thinking and that sort of thing. But like when you really stop and think about it, like you're really just setting an expectation like in your mind, right? And then reinforcing those connections. And through that like focus, you are opening up the brain to those like plastic changes. There's actually a chemical like related to focus. And it actually makes a hell of a lot of sense actually from like the science side of it. And like whatever your like strategy or flavor of like technique is or whatever, is probably less important. It's more important that it's good for you and that it works for you, right? Like as like an individual. But like I'm now at the place where I've come like full circle and I'm like, oh yeah, these are actually just like all the brilliant techniques for how to like do that thing. And like understanding the mechanism is actually like, it's neat, but it's like less important actually for like the how.
Okay, let's talk more about that. Is it true that there's like a time marker on it? So is it like 7 years? Like something about 7 years and the neuroplasticity in the brain and how it changes?
So I am not a neuroscientist.
Disclaimer.
Okay, so like the super high level version that'll keep me out of trouble here is there's a chemical in your brain that gets released, right? That basically like opens you up to undergoing like plastic change very readily.
Epinephrine?
No, there's another one.
Okay.
Epinephrine actually does like release that chemical, I think. Yeah. So basically you have what's called like the critical period, and there's critical periods in the brain for like different things. It's like when children are going through like different stages of development, et cetera. And there's a period where that critical window closes, which is basically when that chemical stops being just readily emitted. So people are often like, oh yeah, like you can only learn stuff like when you're a kid, which is total bullshit. Like a 70-year-old person has the exact same plastic capacity as somebody who is 7.
Oh, interesting.
But the thing is that the way that you release that chemical as an adult is through focus. And focus is pretty hard. Especially in the current culture, right? So like the common thread among all of these different techniques and things that people are into, if you think about it for like half a second, is it's all different ways to like increase your focus.
Oh, interesting.
While participating in certain like thought patterns. And so by having that focus, you make yourself open to that plastic change. And then by reinforcing those thoughts, you're literally remodeling your brain.
Dude. Is this why breathwork is so powerful? Because you can't be anywhere but present?
Yeah. No. And so, okay. So here I'll bring it full circle back around to parkour.
Okay.
So parkour, there's all this flashy shit of people jumping between buildings and stuff. It's all garbage.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not actually the point. Yeah. This is how people get hurt and stuff. So the thing with parkour, right, is if you imagine like a circle, and that circle is your physical capabilities, okay? Your mental capabilities of the things that you can convince yourself to do is very small within inside of those physical capabilities. And people who get hurt and train poorly try to train on the edge of their physical capabilities. They try to push themselves there, right? And which is very dangerous.
Yeah.
But training just outside of your mental capabilities, well within the circle of your physical capabilities, is incredibly safe and also incredible for growth. So when you're going to do a jump between two things, or you're going to try to do whatever, run up a wall, do a backflip or something like that, the amount of focus and like the amount of presence that you have to be safe is incredible. And to get yourself to physically do something that if you make a mistake, right, it could be very detrimental, right? And so I didn't realize that this was happening, but I really got into training parkour like sort of at the end of high school and early in university. And that's actually where I went through the most dramatic change of all the things that sort of led to like all these entrepreneurial type things or whatever. And I didn't realize it, but I was basically participating in some like incredibly deep like focus and like meditative work. I would go out and train by myself like at night and go out and there'd be a jump. And like, the worst thing that's going to happen is sprain an ankle or something. It'd be fine in 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah. But like staring down that jump and getting yourself to physically go through the action of jumping literally as hard as you can, and then have to land with such precision on such a small like target, right? I'm jumping between curbs made out of concrete. Like this is not next level physical things. But psychologically, the process that you have to go through to get control of your own thoughts and have those thoughts then control your body in a way that goes through these complex motions or whatever, you're very much like remodeling your capacity to control your thoughts.
Oh, wild.
So
that is so wild.
So interesting, right?
So is that similar to flow state then that people talk about?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be like a very similar thing. So I've since doing that, like since practicing parkour, and it's not like a thing you stop doing. It's more of like an idea, right? I've found that like my ability to willingly drop myself into like a state where I can be productive and do the things that I need to do has gotten much easier.
That's so wild. I think in our world, there's not enough people who have those things, those activities in their world that allow them to be in that flow state, in that present state. And I'm just thinking for myself, the things that do that for me, definitely cold plunging.
Sure, totally.
Where were you this morning?
We're going to go do it after this, actually.
Oh, I already did it for 6 minutes. Want to do it again?
I'll do it for 7. Okay. That way I can be the best.
I'm the best.
Are there 2? We could do it as a face-off.
No, but there's 1. And we can see how many people we can fit in it.
I'm so down. Imagine 2 people are like having a breath holding contest. Like we were going to do it right now.
Yeah.
I would probably pass out before I would give up.
Really?
Yeah.
That's how much you want to win.
Unfortunately.
Oh, damn.
But here's the thing. And the thing is that like I'm less interested now. Maybe this is maturity. Maybe this is just me finding new ways to recontextualize a bad behavior. But like, I'm not that interested actually in beating you in particular.
Okay.
I'm interested in seeing what my personal limit is, and I'm using you as a benchmark.
That is an interesting way to think about it. Okay. So it's not like, I want to beat you.
No, I don't actually care about beating you in particular.
I see that. I see that. Okay. Interesting. But I bet I'll still beat you.
There's no chance.
Do you want to have a cold plunge contest?
Yeah.
I'll kill you.
Put it in the show notes. Who won?
Oh my God, I'm actually excited to beat you. Because I know I'm so confident. I'm so confident.
I will go into hypothermia before I lose. No, this is an actual problem because I actually have. So here's the thing. Actually, I've talked about this with one of my friends. Is that because of going through all like the basically the mental training of like training parkour and getting myself to do things that are dangerous, but I'm like, look, it's only dangerous if I lose focus, right? Like I know that I can do this. I've done this a million times or whatever, right? And then I go and execute the move. I sometimes have like an unhealthy relationship with fear insofar as that like I don't experience it when I ought to.
Oh, interesting.
So I went snowboarding a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it had been a minute since I had gone. And I was with a friend. It was her birthday or whatever. So like, fine, we're going to go snowboard. And the conditions were garbage. It was like really icy and kind of like chunky or whatever. And I hadn't snowboarded in like years. And I'm going down the hill and I'm going like really fast. And I'm calm, totally calm. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I'm going a lot faster than like the other people. This might not be safe. But I couldn't find a frame of reference for it. Yeah. Right? And I hit a chunk of ice and broke my collarbone, actually. And I'm like, ski patrol is like literally like sledding me off the mountain. And I'm sitting there and I was like, I don't know if I feel fear at the right times anymore.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
When do you feel fear?
Oh, I just feel afraid of other people. Like physical things don't bother me anymore.
What do you mean other people?
What they think of me.
Oh, really? Not that they're going to kill you?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, just literally like the way other people perceive me. It's the bear, isn't it?
Interesting. Did you wonder what I perceived of you when we first met?
Always.
Really?
Always.
And then what did you think I thought of you when we first met?
The thing is it's less like a particular thing, right? There's just always this uncertainty like all the time. Like, and it's like weird because like I could see you like 50 times. Every time I see you, I'll always wonder if you think poorly of me.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you're pretty cool.
Oh, thanks.
I think you're really cool.
I think you're cool as well.
I have the opposite. I don't give a fuck.
That's good, probably.
I don't know though, because sometimes I feel like I care deeply for people. Sure. Like I'm like, I love you so much, but I'm like, I don't give a shit if you like me.
That's probably good in some cases. I mean, it's definitely not great all the time, is it?
I'm trying to think of when it's not great. It serves me a lot in...
Do you I'll ask a question maybe to draw it out. So do you rub people the wrong way in a way that you don't necessarily need to or wish that you didn't because you don't consider how they feel?
No, I don't have that experience.
Well, that's good then.
But
if you do, you don't actually know because you don't care. This is actually an intervention. The podcast isn't even rolling. We just needed to talk about this in particular.
Okay, let's double click into this a little more.
That was a computer analogy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay,
because I know I'm talking to you.
I hate computers.
No, really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Really?
No, if I didn't have to have one.
Oh yeah, like screens and shit?
Yeah. I don't have social media, any of that shit.
Here's the thing. It's like I care so deeply about other people's experience. Like I care more deeply about your experience and how you perceive life and how you're feeling than if you like me. And I think
that's actually nice.
Do you know what I mean by that?
I do.
And the reason is because you not liking me has nothing to do with me. It has actually everything to do with you.
Totally.
I'm just a mirror for you.
No, you're absolutely right. That was like sort of at the beginning of the conversation, right? It was where it said it like best manifested, right? Yeah. I can intuit how other people are feeling with a high degree of certainty.
Yeah.
Which is good because I care about them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes my care of other people's experience is so intense for me. So if I know that you're upset, it's really like, I'm like, oh man, Matt's upset. Like it has like an impact on me.
Yeah.
What's your beef with the entrepreneurship industry?
It's just a bunch of bullshit hype, isn't it? I don't like people who they're like, I want to have all the money and like do empire, and it's just ego stroking horseshit, right?
Yeah.
My favorite. I feel the same way about politicians. I don't like politicians that want to be politicians, and I don't like entrepreneurs that want to be entrepreneurs. Right? Used to be you had to convince people to run for office because nobody wanted the damn job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel the same way about entrepreneurship. Is I'd rather it's just people who really just have no other option other than to just do the thing because that's their inclination, and it just really is driven out of like a care for seeing the thing grow, as opposed to like. This idea, like the idea that someone could go to a university to try to get an entrepreneurship degree is like the stupidest fucking thing I could possibly imagine.
Why do they allow that?
Because they make money. Like
it's so stupid.
Just turtles all the way down, isn't it?
When I hear someone say I'm going to school to take entrepreneurship, I'm like, that's ridiculous.
The stupidest thing. Yeah. So I gave that talk where I said like I don't like people telling me what to do.
Yeah.
They're like, what's one piece of advice you could give like all of these entrepreneurs that are here? And I was like, you shouldn't be here. I was like, if you have a thing, you should be going and finding out that it fucking sucks and move on to the next thing, because your idea right now is objectively terrible. I guarantee it. There's not a single person in this room that probably has a good idea because you're like actually 18.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, you need to go fail all of your shit as quickly as possible, and you shouldn't be here. You should be doing that, because real entrepreneurship is not sitting around in this like self-congratulating like club.
Yeah.
They did not invite me back to speak again.
I can't understand why not.
That's great.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, the event that we're at is epic, but sometimes I go to these entrepreneurship events and it just feels like a dick swinging contest, you know? And I'm just like, I think there's something so intoxicating about just egoless entrepreneurship, if there is a thing, if that is a thing.
Sure.
You know, and I found it interesting yesterday were you in the room yesterday for the wealth panel when Gordy Ball was talking?
No, I wasn't. I was doing a phone call at the time.
Oh, is that more important?
Yes.
What was it about?
I was talking to my kids.
Oh, that is more important.
Yeah.
That is more important. But anyways, like everyone was talking about like making money and revenue and real estate and wealth. And Gordy just like cut the energy in the room by just going, what about helping people? Like, he goes, let me just address the elephant in the room right now. Why are we not talking about impact?
Right.
You know? And I was like,
that's it.
Because I think there's something so intoxicating about an entrepreneur who has an impact lens, but a true impact lens. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs who use impact as like this marketing strategy, like another marketing strategy.
Totally.
You know, like
it's absolution of guilt.
Yeah. It's like, I'm making so much money.
Yeah. No, my thing was like, oh, I care about all this stuff. How do you get it done? Oh, you need utility. Oh, what's liquid utility? Oh, it's money.
Yeah.
Oh, we should probably make some of that then.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so interesting. It's like going back to like, intent. Mm-hmm. It's like when we come from a heart-centered place and when we are just like, we just genuinely want to make the world a better place. I feel like the rewards come in such, going back to energy,
totally
magical, mystical ways. And you're like, how did this even happen?
Yeah. And it's like when you come to events like this, where it's been like so well curated that you have all these people that have like that similar intent, like it's actually just magic, isn't it?
It really is. And that's where like the Harry Potter effect can come in. It's like, we are literally just creating magic moment by moment. Mm-hmm. And I do, yes, there is a lot of like garbage in entrepreneurship, but like that's like anything. I think you can go into like
people
anything.
Suck it everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
People suck it in and out, they got great burgers, but sometimes whatever. Right. But then there's like Ryan Morin yesterday was talking about like capitalism for good. Yeah. And like we're entering into like the greatest time in history for us to add value.
Absolutely.
And create and do what we want. And with the integration of AI, it's like we're buying back our time to actually add more value into the marketplace.
That's right.
And I just believe like we're entering into like a really beautiful time for people who want to actually step in and create.
Totally. I'm very optimistic about it. Someone asked me the other day, what do you think about all this AI stuff? And I was like, I hope honestly and truly that it commoditizes everything that ought to be a commodity and leaves space for everything else.
That's it. One of my really good friends, Eric James, who reminds me so much of you. I need you guys to meet. He runs a company called Red Light Therapy. He's like genius. Yeah. You guys are like brothers from another mother, I'm sure of it.
Excellent.
But him and I were hiking the other day and he's like, so what are you going to do with all of your free time now that AI can do like most of your shit? I'm like, I love that way of thinking.
That's a great question. Yeah.
Because it's like when humans are supported and we're satiated and we're cared for, we're not in survival mode. Mm-hmm. And when we're not so much in survival mode, we can actually take our God-given spiritual gifts and pour it into the world and just create so much magic.
Totally.
And all of us doing that, like anything, it's like the humans are the ones that are going to be directing the AI. So it's like if we get our shit together and raise our consciousness just a little bit more, I think we can it'll just become a reflection of our values on it. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Dude, this has been so fun. I'm so glad we did this. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Anytime.
Where can people find you and get amongst your work?
So my work is at proteusdigitallab.com. And you can find me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can message me there because I don't do social media.
You're so cool. I love people.
Not about cool. I just want to go do this stuff. I need to take a fucking picture of it all the time.
All right, we'll put those links in the show notes so people can get a hold of you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been so awesome.
Cheers. Let's find another mimosa.
Yeah, let's get more mimosas. Woo!